There we go. Hello.
Hello.
Welcome to our live session today. We are again still in Canada, and we are really excited to be here today with you and to talk about something that Kilani and I do a lot of work in, and I thought it would be really fun to share this with you as well. And that's basically around trust and teamwork and understanding how teams can be really successful working together.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's such an important topic. And one thing that I've found in my work is both individuals and teams have this tendency to say we want more results. And when we want more results, our kind of go to is do more work. But at the end of the day, that's not the way to get more results, in most cases at least. And what I really like about what we're going to share with you today is there's a bit more of a system to it that still is going to result in the results that we want, but it kind of digs a little bit deeper under the surface to make sure we're covering all our bases in order to get to the results we want.
Mm. And something that I see a lot, right, in the coaching that I'm doing with companies and corporate teams is a lot of companies they assess teamwork, right, really around kind of like am I producing the work that I need to do as a team, right? Are we delivering? And ultimately, when a company sees a team delivering the work, they're kind of like, hey, cool,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like we got this. Like the team is great. When in reality, most teams that I see have phenomenal people in them who have this capacity of performing at such an incredible level, but the companies very rarely set up an avenue for success for them to really explore themselves as a team. It's almost like Major League Baseball versus minor league baseball, and where a lot of companies are kind of happy, kind of comfortable with the team performing like it's a minor league baseball team as long as it's producing the results that it needs to produce.
Mm-hmm.
And then and without that encouragement, right? Um, teams just kind of float there, and they just kind of live in this resigned state of, hey, I'm just producing my work and I'm doing fine, right? And then every once in a while would encounter a team where the team leader is somebody who really drives that kind of hey guys, yes, we are meeting the targets, but let's see what else we can get out of ourselves. Let's see what else we can explore and do some incredible things. And of course, those are the type of teams that we didn't see that really make a difference in organizations and really stand out. And then you'll have other departments kind of say, well, what are they doing differently? And at the end of the day, it is how are they functioning as a team in a way that really enables them to outperform far from whatever extrinsic demands are really being put on them. And I think that's one of the big challenges, is that there doesn't seem to be a lot of initiative and drive, right? When you're showing up to work and you're kind of doing your job and you're doing what you're supposed to do, it's like, why would I do more, right? Why would I try and perform more? It's like, basically the what's in it for me
Mm-hmm.
type thing, and ultimately, of course, we know that when if people want to have an amazing career, the best way to do that is by standing out, not by fitting in.
Mm-hmm.
And so the question that I have from a lot of professionals is, what do I need to do to boost my career, to stand out? And you say, well, what are you doing to stand out? And very often it's not a lot. They're just doing their jobs, and that's the incredible thing, and especially in this volatile world, right? There's a recession going on right now. There are a lot of companies that are right now, firing teams of people, getting rid of what is perceived to be obsolete, or what they need to cull various different departments of whom they say, hey, listen, we can shrink this department and we'll still keep functioning, but at least we got to save costs somewhere because we're not making the profit margins that we would like to make. And of course, it's those teams of whom the company thinks they're getting the least amount of value, and so what is in it for you? Well, number one is that the greater your visibility is as a team, the more valuable you're going to become for that organization. And then in times of a recession like this, you can pretty much, the chances of still being around at the end of that recession is much greater, but also the chances of actually being able to expand as a team and to be able to take on bigger projects and gain even greater visibility, is also much greater. So it makes your job a lot more fun too, and it makes what you're doing. So there's so much that teams can do just by self-motivating, right? Just by kind of saying amongst each other to say, hey guys, this is us as a team. Is this what we're happy with, or do we want more, right? Do we want to exceed that? And that's always such an interesting conversation that I have because 99.9% of the teams out there are actually just quite happy just doing their jobs. Mm-hmm. Right, and just every now and then you'll have that team that says, no, we want to, we've got a lot more in us. We want to see what we can get out of it. And those tend to be the really successful ones and the ones that stand out.
Yeah, and for those teams, could you maybe share what the model is that we're going to be sharing today?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's say that you're either in a team, or if you are, kind of leading a team, right? So you might be a first-time team leader, where you're, kind of in the you've just gone from an individual contributor, right, to kind of doing your own work to like now all of a sudden you've been assigned a team of people and that you have to work with. How are you going to set that team up for success? Or you might be an existing manager, or it could even be a CEO of an organization, where you say, hey, I want to be able to provide my teams with, enough empowerment and fuel where they can really, kind of exceed any form of expectations that we can expect. Whatever level that you're at, this is really going to help you a lot. And what that model is, it's based on Patrick Lencioni's book, which is The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And if you've never read the book before, and you want to be a team leader, or you are a team leader, it's a book that we highly recommend that you pick up sometime. But in this book, Patrick Lencioni shares a model that we use as well, and we've actually just become the sole partners of Wiley Publishing to actually offer this training and also this model to companies, which also includes assessments and all of that kind of stuff, to really be able to help you assess where your team stands on these 5 behaviors. And basically these five behaviors work like a pyramid, and what they are is they start at a fundamental level. It starts with trust, right? And trust is a very interesting thing because in my opinion, it is a word that is used, probably even overused, but it is used in so many different ways, and there are so many misconceptions around the type of trust that's required to be able to build a cohesive team. And I think that's always one of the challenges. And I remember running a workshop a number of years ago with a team, and I would ask them and say, so where do you guys stand on trust? And the first thing that they said was like, well, we really trust each other. Like, we trust each other so much. We've been working together for 6 months now, and we've done such an amazing job on trust. And so, well, what does trust mean to you? And when we went through all of these team members, basically to them, trust was the ability to predict each other's behavior. And what I really mean with that is that they would say, yes, that person, I can really trust them to deliver on time. I only have to ask a question once, and they deliver on time. And that is the ability to predict. That's actually not what trust is. That's reliability. And reliability, of course, is a really important component of trust. But at the end of the day, there's a lot more to it. And when we're working as a team and as a collective, it's not predictive trust that we're actually looking for, but it's more vulnerability trust. And vulnerability, of course, is that ability for you to feel safe in that environment where you can say, hey guys, I'm not doing too well. I'm struggling here. I need help, right? That's the kind of vulnerability that we want to be able to see in team members, so that they can kind of escalate any challenges or any issues before too much time has passed, and then we have to then backtrack and fix things and do all of that kind of stuff. And so when people feel comfortable enough to share with each other where they might be, might not be that strong, or they might feel like they're failing, or they might, kind of all of those kind of things, and where they then know that the rest of the team is going to support them in that. They're not going to judge them, or they're not going to, kind of tell them that they need to step up or whatever, but rather than say, hey, how can I support you? How can I help you? That starts to develop an environment where people then really start kind of being willing to kind of speak up and do things. And so at a fundamental level, trust is a critical element in developing your team. And so if you are a team leader, think about that the level of trust that you feel with your team. Are your team members people with whom you feel you could share anything about things that your doubts and your concerns and all of that kind of stuff, and be totally fine with that? And do they feel the same about the team, about each other, and about you? And if your answer to that question is I don't know, that's a red flag, because if you want to be making sure that your team can function well, you want to make sure that you know the answer to that question.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the most important parts of that trust is feeling, as you mentioned, vulnerable, but also being able to show up authentically as yourself. And the reason why that's so important is because it transitions into that next level of the 5 behaviors, which we'll talk about in a second, but is kind of a funny concept, at least to me, because the concept is conflict. And I'll let you talk a little bit more about why that's important, but I had always seen conflict as something as not such a good thing. And I know that a lot of other people are on the same page as that, but what I really like about this model is how much it stresses the importance of actually having some conflict within teams. And in order for us to actually feel confident enough to bring things to the table and to create a little bit of tension there within our team members, it's also important that we have trust with each other. Because, imagine bringing a hard conversation to someone you don't trust versus someone you do trust. It's probably a lot easier for the person that you do trust, right?
Yeah, exactly. And we have a tendency to want to be more vulnerable with people that we trust. Mm-hmm. And we have a tendency to not want to be so, because we feel like we have to have a certain, kind of way of showing up, right, as professionals. And the moment we feel that, it already brings the conversation around healthy conflict, right, becomes a lot more difficult, so yeah, and at the end of the day, what makes a team better is those tough conversations. Is are we doing a good enough job? Are we coming up with the solutions? Are there things that we can do better, right? And am I willing to disagree, even though the whole team might be agreeing on a topic? Am I then, when 9 out of 10 of my team members agree on doing something, but I feel strongly that that I have something to add to that, or maybe even a different perspective, am I at that moment in time in a position where I feel empowered to still be able to speak up and say, hey guys, I know you're thinking this and it's great, but I disagree, right? Or are you the kind of person who say, what, just to keep the peace, I'm going to keep quiet and I'm not going to speak up, right? And all too often we see in teams that there are too many people that prefer to keep the peace, and they prefer harmony right? Rather than healthy conversation. And so usually what you see in a team is you'll see one or two dominant people, right, who thrive in conflict, who love conflict, who love the debates and the hard conversations, and love to speak loudly and and gesture their opinions. And so what ends up happening is if you have a few of those people at a table, they're going to take over the conversation, and it really what it does is it minimizes perspectives from, let's say you have a team of 12 people, I'm just saying something, and and only 3 of them are speaking, then it minimizes the team's breadth from 12-fold to 3-fold. And that is a minimizing element in any team, and any team that is minimized will therefore also produce less results in their work, right? So again, if you're in a team and you find yourself in these situations where people in your team are not speaking up, that again could potentially be a red flag. Why is not everybody contributing? And are you creating an environment of trust that is giving everybody the opportunity to contribute in the way that they feel they need to contribute, not in the way that you want them to contribute. And some people like to contribute more quietly, and others more loudly, and giving them that space to be able to do so is really important. So, we have our cat. So I don't know if you guys are hearing it, but we have a cat that's going nuts right now. She's playing with a toy, so you might hear some scratching sounds in the background. That's the cat running around going nuts. Yeah. So it's her workout time. She's in the gym. Yeah. So she's flexing some muscles. So that's always good. So think of those first 2 layers, right? Being trust is your fundamental layer, and then of course conflict, healthy conflict, as that second layer, that second marker of how effective your team might be. Yeah. And then of course that takes us into the third behavior, which is around commitment. Right? Yeah. Have you ever witnessed teams that weren't committed to each other? And
I would even argue that most teams are not fully committed to each other, at least in the sense that we're looking for. And something that we talk about a lot is the idea of promises, is being able to fully make a committed promise to someone, and that doesn't look like, oh, I'll think about it, I'll try, I'll put it on the bottom of my priority list, I'll get to it when I get to it, or even the worst one, promising and then having no intention of actually following through on it. And I think why this is important to touch on is that it's not just a matter of everyone saying, yes, we're doing it, and then moving forward, and this is where the conflict piece comes into importance, is if someone really disagrees with an idea, having the ability to say, actually, maybe we should do it this way, and making sure that everyone on the team is on board with one certain idea, whatever that idea is going to ensure that each individual is performing at their maximum potential to achieve the results, essentially, right? And it's not to say that teams who half commit to things or say, oh, I'll put it on the bottom of my to-do list, aren't going to achieve things, but it's just going to slow down the progress and even kind of feed back down into that trust piece of if I'm putting projects on the last of my priority lists and I'm saying, oh, I'll just clean my house first and then I'll work on this, and things aren't getting done by one person or another person as fast as some of the others, there can create a little bit of tension and mistrust there as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Feeds back up.
And I can see that really applying with strategy, right? Like if the team agrees on a strategy, and so and if you think about sports teams, right? In order for a team to win any match, whatever match that they're in, they have to have a strategy. And without a strategy, they're not going to be. It doesn't matter how amazing they're going to be as a team, right? Whether you're Real Madrid or just some team that plays on the corner on the street, on the street. And so for the team, every team member has to agree on the same strategy, and of course, and very often in sports, it's like we have a saying in sports is what's the play going to be? What's our play and what's our strategy? And if all team members say, hey, yeah, let's do that strategy, that sounds great, but 5 of them kind of say, well, no, it doesn't really sound like such a great idea. I'm going to do my own strategy, right? Things are already quickly going to fall apart, right? So absolutely, that's where agreeing on something like strategy, and then once that agreement is made, to then be able to fully commit to that strategy. And of course, you and I, we talk a lot about the 3 C's of success, right? Which plays in here a little bit, right? With the number one is that in order for us to be able to be fully committed, we also have to have the conviction. We have to have the first C, which is that the self-belief and the desire and the passion and the drive and the motivation and all of those things to really want to do it, right? And if we don't want to do it that badly, that's going to decrease the value of the commitment to which we're actually going to, promising what we're going to do, right? So without that conviction, commitment decreases. And I think that's an area where a lot of teams struggle, is not just hey, how committed are we to what this team is going to do, but how much do I really believe this? How much am I, really feeling it, to a point where I can feel in my DNA that this is good for us as a team, it's good for the organization, it's good for it, and I really badly want to be a contributor to that process, right? And so that's why, conviction, commitment, and then of course the third C is consistency, right? Which is really around, okay, so now I'm committing, but can I stay committed, right? Am I showing up to the team every single day with that same level of commitment that I started with, when we made the agreement? And if the answer is no, what's going on? And you will kind of see it that it's likely the 2 layers below, right? The trust and the conversations, right? That ability to have that type of healthy conflict. If something in there starts falling apart, that's when you start seeing that decrease in commitment. Even though people might tell you, hey, yeah, I'm fully committed, but not really kind of owning that commitment, because they're not applying those 3 C's in that same way. Yeah, exactly. And then what ends up happening, of course, is as teams make agreements on, this is what we're going to do. I just got off a coaching conversation right now. I don't know if you heard the conversation, but it was with a manager who is managing somebody in her team who is managing somebody that doesn't want to do their job, that committed to something, but has now decided that they're not going to do it, right? And so the question is, how do I have that conversation, number one, with my person, my subordinate who is managing this person, right, in order to be able to set them up for success, but also how do I have that conversation with that person who is refusing to do their job, right? And that's a great example of where there probably wasn't a lot of value placed on the degree of commitment, right? And so when that starts falling apart, we start seeing that's where people don't do the job at the quality that they promised that they would actually be doing, or something like that. And in this case, it's just complete standstill of the project because this person is refusing to move forward in a way that he had agreed upon, right? And so that's when accountability becomes such an important part, which is that 4th step, right? Is how are team members holding each other accountable? And in this example, what ends up happening is, because the 2 team members, the subordinate manager and the person who's supposed to be reporting to that manager, they're not able to have a healthy conversation with each other. They're not able to engage in healthy conflict, that they can actually talk about what, their levels of trust, what's actually going on, their levels of commitment. They can't hold each other accountable anymore. And so what ends up happening is that then just ends up getting escalated to the leader, because the leader has to then exert power, which is what I was talking to this leader, which in a way is a form of aggression, because now we have to apply ourselves aggressively, and just to kind of in the sake of this conversation, aggression is something we see a lot in the workplace because of that, because people can't have that healthy conversation holding each other accountable. So these things always end up getting escalated, right? It gets escalated to leaders, it gets escalated to HR, it gets escalated to somewhere, right? And it's that inability to have those conversations that drives so much aggression in the workplace. And aggression, if you might say to yourself, I don't apply aggression. But the moment that you are trying to make somebody do something they don't want to do, you're already applying aggression. Because the definition of aggression, right, is basically acting in a way that does not invite conversation, right? And so what that means is that you're only expressing what you want and what you need, but you don't really care about whether or not you're having a conversation about it. You just want that person to do the job. And at that moment in time when you don't want a conversation, you're already applying aggression. And aggression in the workplace is one of the most common dysfunctions that I have seen at all levels, because people haven't learned how to have these healthy conflict conversations with each other, because they don't trust each other, because that level of trust is not there, right? And so it all trickles down kind of throughout that organization, and it creates a culture, right, of people not being able to kind of get along and commit to each other and have these type of healthy conversations. And so if you are seeing these type of interactions, right, where people feel like they have to tell another person how to do their job and do all of that kind of stuff, tell people that they're not doing well enough, all of those things are forms of aggression, right? Because when you're telling, you're not inviting a conversation. That's the difference between aggression and assertiveness. Assertiveness is different, because assertiveness is you're asserting your opinion, but at the same time you're also inviting them to come back with their opinion. And so when we're inviting a conversation, even though we're asserting our opinion, and it could be a heated debate, right? And that's why healthy assertions, right, are very, very important, that when we assert ourselves and we assert our opinions, but that when we're also inviting that conversation back. The moment I stop inviting that conversation back, I'm not being assertive anymore, I'm being aggressive. And that happens a lot in organizations, because aggression, people think, gets results sooner, because I just tell you what to do, shut up, don't waste my time, just do the job, just get through this and we'll figure it out. And it's those short-term needs and results that we think we're getting that over time end up costing us a tremendous amount of money, because we don't end up producing the results, and we don't end up growing the team or the organization beyond its ceiling of potential that it's in that environment and in that culture, right? When we nurture the team and we nurture things like healthy conflict and trust and commitment and and the ability for people to hold each other accountable throughout the entire organization, to learn how to have those conversations, that's when we actually see growth way beyond any potential ceiling that you can see. And that's when companies start to produce not just results but profit, right? And Kilani and I talk a lot about interaction quotient, right? It's the quality of the interactions within an organization that drives your profit. If you have a team or you have an organization and you want that company to make more profit, right? Don't get rid of your people. Make sure your people can get rid of issues through trust, through healthy conflict, through commitment, through accountability, and of course then a collective desire to produce the results that are needed to be able to move the whole organization forward, not just individually. And I think that's one of the major challenges with that fifth point, which is about results, is that when you're in an environment where those 5 behaviors are not being nurtured, right? People have a tendency to kind of say, well, I'm just here for me. I'm just here to make a living, and so I'm going to focus on my career. I'm going to focus on what's good for me. And if it's good for me, and it works for the team, hey, that's great. But if it's good for me, and it's not good for the team, I'm going to choose me, right? You know, in the moment we are in that type of environment, that's always going to decrease that potential, and the team will never produce the results that it deserves to achieve. You know, as where, on the other hand, if we can create a culture where it really is around what can we do to build the team, right? And even if it means putting your own interests aside for 5 minutes and really kind of helping the team, you know, move forward and you know, above, you know, whatever ceiling that there is, at that moment in time, that's when you see that also there's great individual growth, right? Because you achieve a lot more as an individual when the whole team achieves. And that's an interesting paradox to me as well. As like, you know, I have so many conversations with people say, oh, you know, I want to be that next C-suite leader, or I want to be this, or be that. And a question that I have is what are you doing to elevate your team? And they're like, well, what do you mean? Right? You know, because this is about my career. It's like, well, yeah, but as a leader, your greatest task is your ability to set your people up for success. And that's a skill you already have to possess before you can get hired into that role. What are you doing to elevate your team, right? You know, and very often there's not a lot going on with regards to, you know, a person taking that level of responsibility and accountability toward you contributing to elevating the whole team, right? You know, and so I think that's why the 5 behaviors is such a powerful tool, because it allows us to frame a lot of the issues that we might be missing, a lot of the blind spots when we think that we have a team that's producing well, because produce results, but it doesn't mean it's exceptional in the way it's producing results, right? And so taking this framework and then just looking at the team based on that, through that lens of the 5 behaviors, can really help us identify certain blind spots that if we manage to smooth those away, or even dial them down a little bit, that could greatly improve the results of the team, but also, of course, the profit of the organization. Yeah. So that's kind of, you know, where we wanted to share with you today, right? Is you know, when you are working in a team, whether you're a team member, even if you're an individual contributor and you're working in a team, right? Just think of those 5 behaviors. You know, where do you stand with those? But also, where do your team members stand? Where does the team stand collectively in trust, in healthy conflict, in commitment, accountability, and of course in results? And, you know, other things that you guys are missing, right? You know, and maybe, you know, are you comfortable enough to have a conversation with your team members about that and say, hey guys, I heard this you know, we were this live event on you know, LinkedIn or Facebook, and you know, they were talking about, you know, this 5 behaviors of trust, and hey, how about we have a chat about, you know, what we can do better as a team, you know? And if you feel comfortable with that, chances are you're in a pretty healthy team. But if you say to yourself, well, no, that's not my job, and you know, it's like, that's up to the team leader, and you know, I'm not the boss, and you know, chances are there's some issues, and you might want to think about how they can be addressed and how they can be brought up, right? So that's all for us. Kilani, did you have anything to add to the 5 behaviors?
I would just add that if you're watching this and you're thinking that, you know, I would love to implement this. It sounds like such a great idea, but I don't have time. It's a secondary thing. We have to focus on results first. You know, this is great in theory, but you know, all of that. I would just invite you to take a look at what you've been doing so far, both you yourself and your team, and to just take a look at how is that working so far. And if it's working, great, that's great. But if it's not working, that shows you something there, right? And that we invite you to maybe take a look at a different approach, and this one may be one that has been proven to work for so many others and will likely work for you as well. And the last thing that I would say is that if this is something that you want to continue practicing, we're going to be talking about the 5 behaviors for the next 5 weeks. We're going to go in depth to each one of those steps in these live videos. But also, if you would like to get a little bit of practice, get out of your comfort zone in a safe space where you're not working directly with your team, we invite you to join us at our leadership gym, which we have every other Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we can put the link in the comments there so that it's easy to register, completely free to register, free to join. We would love it if you can attend live, as you'll probably get the most out of the sessions there, but if you can't attend live, that's fine too. We'll send you all the recordings.
Yeah. And something else to think about is, as you've likely heard, there is a recession going on. And usually, from my experience, having lived through a number of recessions, we're going to be entering a stage where you might be you might be a manager, you might be an organizational leader, and you might be asked to start selecting out people that have to be removed from teams because we have to cut costs, and there's a certain percentage of people that might have to go. And what you might want to do is look at at the attributes of the people in these teams as it relates to the 5 behaviors, right? So are the people that you want to keep, right? Are they the people that put the team first, right? Or are they the people that just focus on individual performance, that make it about me? Because sometimes who are perceived as high performers are just individual performers. They're great on an individual level, but they're not necessarily great on the team level. And to just think about selecting, if you have to cull down various different teams, is to say, hey, what are the behavioral characteristics that I want to be able to see in this team, even though it's shrunk down, and in all likelihood, it's going to be those 5 behaviors that you're going to want to see in the people that are left over, right? So if you are at the cusp of this and you have to start thinking about that, feel free to reach out, and we can actually help you assess that. We can actually help you identify, who are those people in your organization that you really want to be holding on to and investing more in, and maybe who are those that aren't necessarily contributing to that culture of teamwork, right? So that's all from us for today, and we look forward to seeing you again next week. See ya. Okay, bye.